welcome to Crime in Court. This is the 1996 Menendez brothers trial, California versus Erik and Lyle Menendez, on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. This is their retrial, and unfortunately, we don't have video, only the script. So we are reading through it, and we are on the state's case, part 32. And this will be probably probably the second to the last stream of the pathologist who is currently on the stand, Dr. Lawrence, and so far he's not the greatest witness. Um, I think he has a lot of problems with what he is saying on the stand. He's very wishy-washy in his, I guess that's how to put it. He's very wishy-washy in his medical opinions that he's supposed to be giving, and he's also giving opinions on things that he shouldn't be giving, like ballistics, because he's not an expert in that. So let's continue on with where we left off. We are on Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday, November 8th, and we went on our morning break. We are currently on, I want to say, redirect still. So yes, the court says, "Are we ready for the jury?" Mr. Khan says yes. The court says there was a question apparently from one of the one of the jurors. I'll show counsel. The court says, "Okay, we're ready to resume. We have everybody back. You may continue your examination." Mr. Khan says thank you. In some of the photographs, it may appear that the victim's eyes are opened or closed. Does that have any significance that the eyes are open or closed at the time of the autopsy? No. Why is that? It just doesn't mean anything. Directing your attention to 202, which is a photograph depicting the abrasions to the chest of Jose Menendez, I'd like to, at this time, also show you what has been marked as 242, a bloody shirt. I would ask you at this time, if you would, to please remove that item, if you would. I think I would be better. I think it would be better if I could do it on the floor. I need surface too. Miss Abramson says, "Do you want to use the back of this?" The witness says, "I think the floor will be fine, safer." How is the floor safer? Aren't there like tons of things that could contaminate evidence? Okay. So Mr. Khan says, "If you would, having observed," so the witness holds the shirt up, sorry. And then Mr. Khan says, "If you would, having observed that shirt this morning, did you have an opportunity to observe whether there are any holes?" "Yes, sir, there are. And perhaps if you can there's a piece of cardboard up on the witness table there. Perhaps if you can place that underneath so that the jury can better see the area that depicts a hole to the shirt. Would you just describe for us where that hole is located on the shirt?" This is a ragged series of 3 holes, all clustered in the same area, covering about a 2½ inch area corresponding quite strikingly. Ms. Averson says, "I'm going to object to the witness's statement, Your Honor. Overruled." The witness continues, "Corresponding quite strikingly to the area that I pointed to on Mr. Levin the other day when I was demonstrating the shot passing by his shirt and causing an abrasion." Mr. Khan says, "If you would hold that near the photograph of Jose Menendez that has been marked 202 so we can get an idea where that hole is in relation to the abrasions on his chest. Now, did you also observe any other holes to the shirt?" "Yes, there are some holes on the back of the right sleeve, ragged holes on the back of the sleeve." "Let me use the cardboard again. Several holes on the back of the sleeve." "And do the location of those holes correspond to the injury that Mr. Menendez received to his right arm?" "Yes." "And do those holes assist you in any way in determining the direction of that wound?" "Yes." "In what way?" "The hole in the front of this shirt has where the blood is dried. It has, fortunately, fixed the material in the position that it was at the time of the gunshot injury." And you can see that the material has been pushed in this direction towards the armpit. So, this really firmly establishes my opinion that the direction is front to back. In other words, the shot mass went through the inside of the arm and out the back. Those holes on the back of the sleeve are undoubtedly exit wounds or exit holes. And then, why do you say they are undoubtedly exit holes? Well, indeed, when I looked at these originally this morning, about an hour ago, and it still shows the fibers pass outward. If you look at the inside of the shirt, there are only fibers going outward. There are none coming towards the inside of the sleeve. All right, thank you. You may return the shirt to the bag. I believe it's a double bag. The court says before you remove your gloves and put the shirt back too much, are you going to have any other questions regarding that? Ms. Abramson says yes, and I'm going to handle the shirt, so there's no point in putting it back. The court says, why don't you leave it there? Do you have any further questions for this witness? Mr. Khan says, no, Your Honor, I have no questions at this time. The court says, why don't you leave them on? The witness says, I'll put them back on if necessary. I'm assuming he's talking about gloves or something. All right, so now recross for this witness by Ms. Abramson. She asks, why do you wear gloves to handle the shirt? More for aesthetics than anything else. It's probably not dangerous at this time, but it's decomposing, and if I could wash my hands, I wouldn't mind handling it barehanded. So there's no issue now of any germs that could still be alive or contaminating on that shirt after 6 years, is there? Not original germs. There might be germs that are still there. It has a bit of malodor, so I think malodor. Malodor. So I think there are some organisms there. Yes. None of them very harmful, though. Let's go back for a moment to your previous testimony before this morning. And let's start with some photographs that I showed you yesterday that we didn't put up on the board. These are 2017 and 2018. Do you remember these? Yes. And do you remember my indicating to you that there were areas that appear to be scalping areas, areas that show the impression of pellets going through? Yes. And you recall your previous testimony was that a wound that shows scalloping is likely to be an entrance wound, correct? Yes, usually. And you recall that when you saw those photographs, you indicated that you couldn't determine if the areas I was pointing to looked like pellet areas, entry areas. Is that right? Yes. The reason I was having difficulty, and still am, is that the area that looks like scalping does not have, that I can see, an abrasion color. And so it's difficult to be sure if that is indeed entrance. It could well be exit. Of course. You also showed us the photograph from your own case of a single contact shotgun wound that had no abrasion collar, correct? No, ma'am. Ma'am. Oh, yeah. This is Miss Abramson again. Sorry. I was thinking it was Mr. Khan for a second. Yes. He says no, ma'am. So that just had no hemorrhage. That wound had a very large irregular abrasion collar. You're confusing the two things. All right. Abrasion collar is different from the bruising around the wound. Oh no, he said that. Sorry. Abrasion collar is different from the bruising around the wound. All right. With respect to those photographs, though, I showed you areas that appeared to be scalping, and you resisted that. Now, you've seen the shirt, and there are holes in the shirt right near those areas that I was pointing to, aren't there? Yes, and the shirt holes look like exit wounds. That's your opinion today, correct? That the shirt holes are exit wounds. Yes. And you looked at that shirt for the first time this morning? Yes, ma'am. Are you aware that the defense criminalist looked at that shirt 3 years ago? Objection irrelevant, sustained. Now, you testified just now, Dr. Lawrence, about how strikingly similar, in your words, the location of the cluster of holes on the shirt that is now in court was to where you pointed on Mr. 11. Don't you think it's for the jury to decide whether you pointed to the same place on Mr. 11 or not? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Ms. Abramson says, now explain how you envisioned what caused that cluster of holes it's almost at the midline. That hole that you saw in the shirt, is that correct? The midline of the shirt? No. Well, let's take it out. I don't want to bother with gloves. Let's put it on the board. Now, this whole area, I'm sorry, let's try it. See if we can get it to stick. But Ms. Abramson continues now the right side of the shirt is very encrusted with blood, correct? Yes. So it's difficult to stretch it out, and I don't want to tear it. It's difficult to line it up as it would have looked, well, as, for example, the left side, which has less blood, shows the shirt to be longer on that side. But of course, it isn't, correct? Correct. And here is the, you say, cluster of three holes. There's a large one that's a little bit smaller, and then a little bitty one. Is that correct? Yes. All right, now you're envisioning pellets entering through that hole. Pellets striking that area, the shirt being not the same as the skin, the shirt being able to bunch up, pellets carrying the shirt as they go by wrinkling and bunching, causing more holes than just one, and dragging the shirt across the skin and causing abrasion. Are we serious right now? That is what he just testified to. And that would cause abrasion here, correct? There, and it could cause abrasion on either side because of the forcible dragging of the shirt across the skin. So you're envisioning, or the pellets, so you're envisioning pellets somehow making this hole but not touching the skin. Is that what you're saying? There actually are some marks that may be graze marks from the pellet. Well, we have to do this one theory at a time. I'm answering your question, he says. Well, how many pellets do you think would make a hole that big if that's a hole made by pellets entering? I don't know how many pellets. Is it a large hole? Or it's a large hole, isn't it? It could also be wadding. I think by the look of it, it's more likely pellets. Now, wadding, you haven't mentioned wadding before in your testimony, is that correct? No. Do you know if, in fact, a wad was found on Mr. Menendez's body that would correspond to this hole? There was no mention of a wad found at that location, but it wouldn't stay there. Right, a wad. It went. Are you familiar with the fact that there was a wad found if you dropped a line directly from that hole down to his right thigh? Are you aware that there was a wad found sitting on top of his right thigh? Objection, irrelevant. Overruled. No, ma'am. If there was, it could have been from that. From that hole? It's possible, yes. So a wad could have gone through that hole, struck his chest, and dropped down and landed on his right thigh, correct? It could have struck him in the area, causing the abrasion, and then fallen out. Yes. Yes, ma'am. All right. And as you started to indicate, apart from the patterned area, there's another dark spot right in the same area, is there not? Yes. And that dark spot could correspond to this hole where a wad could have hit and then dropped to his leg. It's possible, yes, ma'am. Now, you understand, do you not, Dr. Lawrence, that the type of ammunition that was used here carries two wads inside each shot shell, or didn't you know that? I don't know how many wads the shots have. Well, hypothetically, if I submit to you that there are two wads, one is compressed paper and one is a round plastic disc, couldn't that explain both of these holes? Yes. Now, you've indicated today that because of your examination of the shirt, of the inside of the shirt sleeve, you've made a determination as to the direction of the fibers. Yes, ma'am, it looks that way to me. Are you a fiber expert? No. Did you examine it under a laboratory microscope? No. These are good questions. This is some good again, she's like on it with her cross examination. She's really good. Now, you've already told us you're not a blood spatter expert, correct? Correct. So you have testified now this morning that you think the wound to the upper arm was front to back, is that right? Yes. Previously, would it be fair to say your inclination was to believe that it was back to front? No. No? No. Gee, previously you had no idea either way. Correct. All right. Let's talk for a minute about blood spatter, though, okay? What direction are these spatters going in, Dr. Lawrence? Do you have any idea? I'm not a blood spatter expert, but he acted like one before on, I think, direct. If I were to tell you hypothetically that because of the way that these drop tails, this blood is traveling from right to left, I would pay no attention to it, he says. So you'd pay no attention to blood traveling from right to left down the entire side of this shirt. Is that what you're saying? No, ma'am. I would pay no attention to what you're telling me about blood spatter. Well, thank you, Dr. Lawrence, but I would never say that to you. I do pay attention to what you say. That was a great response. But of course, the court says, okay, counsel, let's not get into discourse. Ask your next question. If I were the judge, I'll allow it. Ms. Abramson says, I'm offering you, as an expert witness, a hypothetical. You understand what hypothetical questions are in the law. Objection, argumentative, sustained. The witness says, I'm not an expert on blood. Objection, sustained. Ms. Abramson says, I want to offer you a hypothetical that an expert in blood spatter will testify that down the entire length of this left side of the shirt, there are blood spatters that are traveling from right to left. I don't feel comfortable testifying in that area. She's not asking you to. She's saying, what if someone else said that? This guy doesn't want to answer these questions. He's done with. She's bested him one too many times and he's just done with her. He's like, I'm not answering that trap. And like, I'm not falling into your traps anymore, lady. And I'm not answering your questions. She says if it was shown that blood spattered from Mr. Menendez's right to his left, do you have any explanation of what could have caused that? I'm not able to answer that question. All right, now let me show you something else if I can. You can see, can you not, in this area of the shirt here in the right shoulder, what appears to be lighter parts of the fabric versus the darker, bloodier parts? Yes. And did you, when you were looking at the shirt, bother to crease the shirt up along those lines? No, but that's obviously the reason for the pattern. Right. If you do crease the shirt up along these lines, the creases are entirely consistent, are they not, with his hand or his right arm being folded across his chest, crumpling the shirt as it goes. That's out of my area. I'm sorry. I see. So all blood spatter is out of your area. Blood spatter on the body, blood spatter on fabric. Is that correct? Oh, she just walked him right into a trap. I've been to a lot of crime scenes in my career, and I've seen a lot of blood evidence and spatter, but I do not hold myself out as an expert. I know something about it, but I'm not an expert. I'm going to return the exhibit to the exterior bag and then to the marked bag. I want to put some photographs back up on the board. Take this down for the moment. Why don't I borrow your pen and I'll put the number on the front? The witness says, thank you. Stevenson says, this is 184. You've seen it before, correct? Yes. Oh, by the way, did you notice this little dark spot right above Mr. Menendez's belly button? I don't know what that is. Okay. Now that photograph, is it reflecting? Juror number 9 says yes. Ms. Abramson says, I'm going to take it out of its plastic holder, and that way it will have less reflection, maybe. She's holding up a photograph that's in a holder, and the jury can't see it. She says, is that any better? The juror says, if you lowered it, it reduces the glare. Ms. Abramson says, any better? Okay. Well, 184 is a photograph that shows the coroner probing the left elbow of Mr. Menendez, correct? Yes. And how many pellet defects were there on the left elbow? I don't recall. Do you want to look it up? I would have to look at the photograph. Well, there's the photograph. That's not a very good one. Let me try that one. I don't think there's any that's any better. Do you have the autopsy report? I see seven. Okay. I can't tell if there are any more than that. I believe the report indicated nine. Like, why are you going off of a visual photograph when you could look at the report and reference it and be accurate? But okay. She says, I believe the report indicated nine. Do you have a copy of your report? There's one here. My file's out there somewhere. Miss Amerson says, I'm sorry, where's Dr. Lawrence's file? Who's got it? There's a pause in the proceedings. The witness says he states that approximately nine individual pellet wounds are present. Damn, she knows this case. Forwards and backwards. Ms. Abramson says, all right, and is there a photograph that you've seen that shows the inside of that arm, the other side of that wound? I'm sorry, I don't recall. Do you know how many can you tell from the description? Okay, first of all, do you know if there were any exit holes on the other side of that elbow? Because this is the outside of the elbow, right? Yes. Okay, the outside of the elbow, and the indication is that the trajectory is back to front without angulation or deviation, whatever that means, right? Yes. And that means just that. They go straight in. Back to front with the body in the anatomic position, which is with the palms rotated toward the front, facing the front. Okay, so back to front in the arms in the anatomic position is true back to front, correct? Back to the back of the elbow to the front. Yes. Okay, so this is the back and that's where the defects are. Yes. And they appear to be going straight. They don't go up, they don't go down, they don't go left, they don't go right, correct? Correct. And there's no photograph that you can recall that shows the inside of that elbow. No, not that I recall. There may be. There were 180 something photographs. If there were, I'd show it to you. Thank you. All right. So you don't know how many actually passed through. Well, he said that none of them did, or he does not mention any exit wounds. Okay. So you don't know if any of them did pass through. I don't know that any of them did. All right, but you do know that there are only 5 pellets inside the elbow by x-ray. Well, let's look again at the x-ray. I'll have to refresh my memory. Certainly. 5 pellets. Okay. We'll put the x-ray up, uh, we'll put the x-ray for that wound just beneath it. Am I reading this x-ray right? It's showing the arm sort of the way I'm holding my arm. Yes. So there are 5 pellets inside the arm. Now let's assume, hypothetically, since you weren't there, that indeed there were 9 defects observable on the outside of that elbow. No exit wound and 5 inside. What happened to the 4? They probably or could have struck the skin and then fallen back out. Okay, and would that indicate to you that's a shot from with low velocity? Those pellets would likely have low velocity. Yes, ma'am. I must warn you, we're getting a little bit out of my area, though. All right, but those extra 4 pellets did not penetrate the elbow, but they did hit it, correct? Yes. So they would have fallen away. Is that right? Possibly, yes, ma'am. You previously testified before today that, well, let me strike that. As far as you know, based on both what shows in the photograph, which is 216, and the description, however confusing the original description may have been, but the description that Dr. Golden gave, even in the first report, that these individual defects to the place where you draw a line in my arm yesterday, which is the right arm of Mr. Menendez, were a separate shot than the larger defect above. Objection misstates the evidence. All right, that's a question, says the court. Ms. Abramson says, yes. correct? Yes or no? He says yes. Thank you. And have you seen a photograph that shows the potential exit wound for these individual pellet wounds that entered the anterior or front of in the anatomically correct position part of Mr. Menendez's right arm? I'd like to see the photograph you're talking about. I showed this to you before we began today. Do you recall I showed you a photograph of the outside, if you will, of his arm? Let me see where it is. I think you've got it there. Not that one. No, it's the next one in the series. Let me see if it's here or back on council table. It's back on council table. I think you guys have it. Let me rummage through this file. There's a brief pause. Well, the one that shows at the scene, the right arm lifted, why don't you see if you can find it here? I don't know where it went. I showed it to you and Mr. Khan, and yeah, here we go. You were hiding it. I showed it to you a minute ago, he says. I'm sorry, never mind, we found it. This is 217, correct? Yes. On the right-hand side of this photograph, you can see the outer part of the area near Mr. Menendez's elbow, correct? The area with the pellet marks is about 4 to 5 inches below the elbow. Right. On the elbow side of the forearm. So it appears that if the entry wound was above, the exit defects are lower on the forearm, correct? I don't understand your question. Where is the entrance wound now? We're talking about these defects that you drew on my arm yesterday, correct? Or, okay, yes. And then on the back of his forearm, there appear to be the series of defects, correct? Yes, but I'm not relating those to that entrance wound. Do you know if they're related or not? No, I don't believe they are. All right. When Mr. Khan was asking you yesterday about Dr. Golden having talked about injuries on a forearm, you indicated there were no injuries on a forearm. Isn't that right? That's correct. But there they are. Yes. So there are definitively injuries on Mr. Menendez's right forearm. Yes. What caused them? They're pellet marks. Right. What are they associated with? What other shot? I would have to, I don't know. So you don't know. Now, this is a scene photograph, so it's extremely bloody, correct? Yes. But you're not having any difficulty visualizing these forearm wounds, are you? No. And this also shows the shirt that we have just been handling and the very ragged defect of the back of the arm, the back of the upper arm, correct? Yes. And that's the other side of the hole which peers into 16? Yes. All right. Now, I had asked you, I know we've established that you did not believe that the individual pellet defects in the inside of the right arm were the same shot as the one above, correct? I don't know. They could be. They could be. I'm not sure. Well, am I correct in recalling that your testimony was since these are individual defects, they show a different level of spread than the big hole? That's correct, but you can have a shot mass with some satellite pellets that are beginning to spread, and it may not be in a regular fashion, so that doesn't help answer the question. So you don't know. I don't know. And when I gave you the hypothetical about whether this group of individual pellet defects could be affiliated with the breast wound to Mrs. Menendez if, for example, Mr. Menendez threw out his arm, whether that lined up with her left arm and her left breast. So you said yes, that could be. Yes. All right. You're changing that? No, ma'am. Okay. Now, you previously have said, have you not, Dr. Lawrence, that you definitely did not believe that the upper arm wound of Mr. Menendez was associated with the left breast of Mrs. Menendez. You told me that, didn't you? No. You never did? I did not say the words that you used. Well, didn't you say because of the pattern of spread on Mrs. Menendez and the fact that there was no great distance separating his right arm from her left breast, you cannot associate the upper arm injury to Mr. Menendez with Mrs. Menendez's left breast injury? No, that was not my testimony. I'm not asking you your testimony. I'm asking you what you told me on the telephone in October when we spoke. I didn't say it that way. No, ma'am. All right. Well, would you like me to say it to the jury the way I would say it? No, I'd like to ask you questions because the way you would say it changes. That's not true. The question is, we'll see. The question is, didn't you previously testify that you did not believe the upper arm injury of Mr. Menendez was affiliated with the left breast injury of Mrs. Menendez? Yes. And you're changing that testimony or you're not changing that testimony? I'm not changing it. I'm also not changing the part where I said I didn't know. Ms. Abramson says, there's no question pending, Dr. Lawrence. The court says, let him finish his answer. The witness says, I'm also saying that, answering the question, stating that I don't know, that it could be. And the answer is, I just don't know. It may be associated and it may not be. All right. So now you're saying you don't know. I said that before. Objection to the form of the question. The court sustains it. The answer stricken. Ms. Amerson says, I haven't finished the question. Did your state of knowledge about these wounds change overnight somehow? Which night are we talking about? Last night. My state of knowledge has not changed at all that I'm aware of. Okay, let's move on. Then the witness says, there have been many discussions over the last 2 days of wounds and interpretations, and many things were said, but my consistent interpretation has been that I don't know if the separate pellet marks are associated with the larger defect or not, and I still feel that way. Okay, let's talk about another part of Mr. Menendez's right forearm. When Mr. Khan was asking you about Dr. Golden and insinuating that Dr. Golden was completely confused here on 183, do you see additional marks to Mr. Menendez's right forearm? Yes. And those are marks that you haven't talked about at all in your testimony. That's correct. And one of those marks is linear, is it not? It looks like a graze wound from Appellate. Yes, ma'am. In Dr. Golden's report, not the part that Mr. Khan read yesterday, but another part describing Mr. Menendez's right forearm, he describes a graze wound just like that, doesn't he? Yes. And what caused that graze wound? A pellet passing by. Yeah, which one? Which shot? I have no idea. Now, how many individual defects? Well, let me ask you a question before we go on. You understand that the diagram, maybe you don't. Let me make sure. 220, this version of 220, this version of this particular supposed event has this number shot 1A on it, okay? Yes. Do you understand the significance of the numbering sequence on these diagrams, that these shot numbering sequences? Yes. Objection, irrelevant, overruled, the answer will stand. Is it your understanding, Dr. Lawrence, that this green trajectory line that's going through Mr. Menendez's right arm is supposed to account for both the upper defect and the lower satellite defects, the individuals? Do you understand that? Mr. Khan says objection, calls for speculation. The court says overruled. The witness says, "Do you have, or you would have to ask you would have to ask the person who prepared the document." Ms. Abramson says, I'm giving this to you as a hypothetical. You've already rendered an opinion about this diagram. I want to know if you have all the facts. The witness says, let me explain. Ms. Abramson says, no, let me ask the questions. Here's the question. Hypothetically, this line going through Mr. Menendez's right arm is supposed to indicate both the upper arm defect and the individual defects that appear in 216. Now, if that is what that's supposed to represent, is it still your position that you do not disagree medically with anything on that diagram? The answer to that would be it might be wrong, but it might not. So you don't know. The diagram is completely correct if you choose either possibility, and it may be wrong about the larger wound, and the answer is I don't know how to find that out. Okay, let's move on with the diagram. In essence, it's telling you the structures that were hit. I gave you a hypothetical telling you the basis of the diagram, telling you both of these wounds are caused by that same shot that went and hit the left elbow. You understand that? And it might be wrong. It might not be wrong. Guy, wishy-washy. Would it be fair to say you don't have a medical opinion that can verify that diagram? Yes. Thank you. You're saying you can't disagree, but you cannot support it either in your medical opinion. I support it in large part, but not entirely. I can't approve the aspect of the separate wound versus the large wound. Let's go on to Mrs. Menendez's left arm. If I put it up there, is that bad? Good. I think I'll move the diagram. Now, I have shown you those photographs before. You have testified about these two photographs, which are 214 and 187. Let me write 187 on the outside. And those are the photographs. 187 is a photograph of the left breast with the left arm shown up close to it. And 214 is a photograph of the left arm lower on Mrs. Menendez's body, revealing additional pellets. Bailiff Wolf says there's a question by the jury. One of the jurors says, "Can you move 214? The glare is, I can't see a thing." Ms. Abramson says, "This one." He says, "Yeah," or they say yes. Ms. Abramson says, "Let me see if it helps if I take it out of the plastic." The witness says, "Just in a different position, it should work." Ms. Abramson says, "Think so? How's that?" Juror says, "I can see half of it now. That's better, a little bit more. Perfect. Okay." Ms. Abramson says, "In 214, the arm is farther down on the body. You can see other defects right under the breast. You can see the defect in the upper abdominal area. At least I can. Now, you can, right?" "Yes." Now, Dr. Golden, in his report, associated, oh, you didn't get the 1992 amendment, did you? I should show that to you. Do you know that Dr. Golden wrote an amendment in 1992 specifically dealing with this left forearm wound of Mrs. Menendez? Well, really, why wasn't that brought up before? He says no. And I asked you, did I not, day before yesterday, if you had ever seen that amendment, and you indicated no, correct? Yes. And did you ever ask for it after I talked to you about it 2 days ago? No. No? No. And no one offered it to you, is that right? No. That's not correct? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that is correct. Here it is. I was saying no, no one offered it to me. Now he's reading it. I think his opinion, I didn't ask you anything. I just handed you the report to read it. He describes in his report 3 shotgun pellet wounds on the anterior outside aspect of the left forearm, correct? I'd like to have a copy of it. Well, Mr. Khan, do you want to give your witness a copy of this report? Mr. Khan says, "Do you have a copy for him?" Ms. Abramson says, "No, I only have one." Mr. Khan says, "He's going to have to wait." Ms. Abramson says, "Well, here, if you don't remember what it says, let me read it over your shoulder." It indicates that there are 3 pellet wounds on the anterior, which is the outside aspect, as I'm showing, of the left forearm of Mrs. Menendez, correct? No. 3 on the inside? On the anterior aspect of the left forearm. So 3 here. Yes, isn't that what she said? And you see in the photograph maybe 3 or more. That's not the anterior surface. I know, but you see 3 or more on the posterior surface, correct? Yes. And then he says, and on the posterior surface. And he finds an exit. He finds an exit and 2 abrasions. Okay, so there are 3 inside that we're not seeing in this photograph. That's what he says, yes. So there's one which is an actual exit, which we are presumably seeing in this photograph. I can't tell. There's no way I can tell that that's an exit. Well, there's a hole, isn't there? I can't tell. Okay. But he seems to think one of these 3 things on the outside is a hole, which means something passed through, correct? Yes. Okay, and then he sees other things that he calls abrasions, correct? Yes. And he believes they are associated with the other wounds. His opinion is the shotgun pellet wound of the left forearm may be related to one of the other previous groups of shotgun wounds described above. Okay, and in the photograph, there appears to be a relationship between the left forearm, and I think there are even more holes there in the top photograph. It lets you see the positioning differently on the arm in relation to the breast, correct? That appears to be associated. The upper photograph depicts the wounds the way I think they probably really are, and that is that they all come on to the breast area with some of them striking the forearm, which is nearby. That's what you think happened? That is not what he said in the amended report, but that's what you think happened. Yes. And do you believe that the left arm is affiliated with the left breast? Yes. I thought maybe you didn't say that this morning. Mr. Khan says, objection, argumentative, sustained. Move to strike, says Mr. Khan. Ms. Abramson says, so I was misunderstanding your earlier testimony this morning. You still believe they are. The court says, okay, let's not mingle all sorts of observations with questions. The objection is sustained. That answer is stricken. Hey, if she's trying to correct something that she thought she misheard, that's totally relevant and should be allowed. I don't understand why he's striking that, but this judge is very prosecution leaning. Miss Abramson says, all right, so in your mind, as of this moment, these left arm wounds are affiliated with the breast wound, correct? Yes. And this, I'm holding in my hand Exhibit 172, which is an x ray of Mrs. Menendez's left arm. Yes. And it shows two pellets inside her left arm. Yes. In the forearm area. Right, which is what we're talking about, correct? Yes. But one of the pellets is much further. Well, I guess it's in the same area. Well, pellets can move inside the body, first of all, by the force of velocity, and they hit things and it makes them move, correct? I wouldn't quite characterize it that way myself. All right, but you had talked, I think you were talking about the chest x ray. You said things tend to keep going, correct? Pellets inside the body tend to keep going. I don't believe I said it quite that way. What are you getting at? In other words, they're not necessarily right under the entry wounds. Oh, that's correct. So they move. Yes, ma'am. That's what I meant. They move as they're entering, passing through the body. I thought you meant they moved afterwards. No, no. Only as they're entering until all the force is spent and then they stop. Yes, ma'am. So wherever they stopped, they stay stopped. Unless they're in a body cavity. But if they're inside what we know is the not hollow limbs, they stay where they are. Yes. By the way, is the chest a hollow body cavity? No, it's hollow in a sense, but when it's in life, it's filled up with lungs, and when the lungs collapse, then usually blood fills up the space. Sometimes there can be air in there. So on occasion, it could be hollow. But you're still talking about, in your opinion, pellets wouldn't move around inside the chest before death. They move a little bit with the position of the body during X-ray examination because the lungs are somewhat flexible and by gravity they change their position a little bit. So is it possible that in the X-ray that we have of Mrs. Menendez's chest, which is 169, that any of these pellets might have moved after death? It is possible, for example, there was, I think, 1,000 cc's of blood described in that chest. If any of those pellets were sitting in that chest cavity filled with blood, they could fall wherever gravity would take them. So you can't be sure that this x-ray of her chest is actually showing where the pellets wound up due to the force of the shotgun wound. That's correct. I can't be sure. Okay, now let's get back to the diagram 220. Did you notice? Let me put it right in there in front of you. In the diagram 220, which on the bottom says shot 1A, is the position of Mrs. Menendez's arm such that she could not have received the forearm wound at the time that she's shown there receiving the breast wound. Yes. So if you believe the forearm wound is affiliated with the breast wound, then this photograph is inaccurate, is it not? I mean, this diagram is inaccurate? Not at all. One would simply have to cock the forearm up. You can't cock a diagram, Dr. Lawrence. As it's drawn, wouldn't you say it's inaccurate to show the forearm slash breast combination? It misses the forearm, so in that sense, it's inaccurate. That's an extremely minor point. And what I believe and I feel the diagram's value is it shows the trajectory and things that were stuck or struck and they were where they were sitting, where the pellets were sitting, I guess. But you don't know what use is going to be made of it after you're back in Stockton. Objection argumentative. The witness says, I'm not willing to discuss that diagram to that type of flaw. Okay, then. Ms. Abramson says, I am asking you if medically your opinion supports her arm not being involved as shown in this diagram with the left breast wound. That's what I'm asking you. Medically, do you agree that the way that is shown, the left arm, no, the arm should be cocked up. So, against the breast. So, you do not agree with that aspect of the diagram. Is that fair? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir. And you note, do you not, Dr. Lawrence, that I placed the X, a cross section, the X right over her left forearm, correct? Looks like it's over the biceps area. I mean, it's over her left arm, though, which reminds me of something else. This direction, this trajectory that's shown here, isn't it too low on Mr. Menendez's right arm to account for the upper arm wound? A little bit. His right arm would be rotated down a little bit. So it's too low as to where it's shown here, correct? It's not perfect. I realize that, but my question is, it's not perfect because it's too low. Is that correct? Yes, yes. Thank you. And if it were higher on his arm, miss Menen it would miss Mrs. Menendez's breast, correct? So if it would not strike her breast, correct? I'm suggesting that it be higher on the arm. His arm would have to be lower. So maybe his arm is lower, but as the artist who drew this first, who drew it, if he had drawn the trajectory higher so that this is just a straight line trajectory, right? Doesn't go up, it does go down. It's passing straightly downward, as you can see. Okay, so it's entering the left elbow, then it appears to be passing through slightly downward. Yes, as I see it. And that's contrary to what the autopsy report says that was the direction in the left elbow. There's no significant difference there. We're talking about a few degrees. You're assuming precision where precision does not exist. Is that contrary to the description given in the autopsy report that the left elbow injury was absolutely straight on, no deviation up or down? No, it's not. Didn't we just read that description? But it's not, it's meaningless. I'm not asking. Mr. Khan says, may the witness finish his answer. Ms. Abramson says, I'm going to object as non-responsive. The court says he was in the process of answering the question. Ms. Abramson says, go on, go ahead. The witness says, if there's no significant difference, no medically significant difference between the two, Ms. Abramson says, but I didn't ask if it was medically significant. I'm simply asking if the autopsy report indicated that there was no deviation up or down, left or right, to the left elbow wound. That's all I'm asking. Oh, that was the wording of the autopsy report. Thank you. And that is nothing to explain to us these aspects. Thank you. Now, in this diagram, however, based on the way this trajectory line has been drawn, in order for it to intersect Mr. Menendez's upper arm where the wound is, the line would have to tip upward, correct? No, ma'am. The arm would have to be further down. Either one. Why don't you ask the person who prepared the diagram? Oh, I intend to, but meanwhile, you're on the witness stand. You're saying the only way to show this injury to Mr. Menendez's right arm is for the arm to dip downward. Isn't that what you're saying? No, ma'am. You could tip the trajectory upward, correct? But then it would miss her breast. Exactly. There's no question again. Just a minute. I don't want the jury to have the wrong. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, please. The court says you asked a question and you're not giving him a chance to answer it. Ms. Abramson says, Did he answer it? The court says, No, he didn't. The witness says, I don't want the jury to feel that there's something wrong with the diagram for these reasons. The arm could be lower. He could be lower down on the couch than he is shown here. Right, says Miss Abramson. The witness says he could be angled down to the right. Uh-huh. He could be slouching his shoulder to the right. Uh-huh. She could have been hiked up and adjusting her seat. There are many, many possibilities. Right. None of these diagrams, not my dolls, none of the x-rays can do anything but tell us those kinds of can do anything to tell us those kinds of details. It's just not possible. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. So, what you're basically saying is what is shown in this diagram is one out of many, many, many different possible or potential hypotheses. It's pretty good. Well, I didn't ask you if it was pretty good. I asked you if it's one of many. Yes. And the test is not pretty good. Who told you that the test was pretty good? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Did someone tell you that the test was pretty good? Objection, argumentative, irrelevant, overruled. Did anyone tell you these are supposed to be pretty good? No, ma'am. I have a feeling it might have been the prosecution because they objected so vehemently. Thank you. Now, let's get back to what this particular diagram shows. All right, it shows a trajectory that indicates, does it not, that a single shotgun blast went and intersected with Mr. Menendez's left elbow, his right inner arm, Mrs. Menendez's left breast, correct? That's what it shows. You'll have to ask the person that prepared the diagram because, as I said earlier, it shows different areas that were struck, leaving out the forearm, however. I don't know what the person who prepared the diagram intended to show, so I can't answer that. Maybe he or she thought it hit both areas in the arm of Mrs. Menendez, and then maybe he thought it hit just the forearm area or just the gaping defect. I don't know. So you mean Mr. Menendez, don't you? I'm sorry, Mr. Menendez. All right. And I think you should ask the person who prepared the diagram. All right. But right now, you've been asked to validate these diagrams. Do you understand that? Yes, and they compare quite accurately to my sense of the path, trajectory, and items or parts of the body that were struck. But with some exceptions. And that's all I'm saying. With some exceptions, correct? Minor exceptions, yes, ma'am. Let's do a minor pellet count. There are 27 pellets in a number 4 buckshot. Is that correct? That's what I'm told. And you believe that for the moment, do you not? Actually, I looked it up. Yes. Mr. Khan says, I would object to the pellet count as being beyond the scope of direct examination. The court says, overruled. Ms. Abramson says, I want to put these in order. Okay, here are 5 blow-ups of the photographs of the x-rays, correct? Yes. We have 177, which is Mr. Menendez's left arm, correct? Showing the left elbow, yes. Looks like 5 pellets. Let's do this. Okay, let's start with Mr. Menendez's left elbow. I'm going to have here an X and a quotation mark. Based on the x-ray, there are 5 pellets in the left elbow, correct? Yes. However, you previously told us there were originally 9 defects on the left elbow and 4 may have fallen away, correct? Are we going to count pellets or wounds that are not there? We're going to try to do both. Okay, 4. Thank you. Now, let's talk about Mr. Menendez's right arm. What's in the x-ray of his right arm? And you see, and you and I went over this before this session began, correct? I see 9 pellets. Let's see if you can we can point to them. Here we are. One, two, these are fragments and don't count. Three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. That one I'm not sure of. So that even could be another one, possibly a fragment or another pellet. Let's put 9 and 1 in the question mark column. Exactly. And this is the right arm. Now let's go to Mrs. Menendez's left arm. There are 2 in the x-ray, correct? I'm not sure about, yes, there are 2 pellets. I'm not sure if the one of the elbow area would be connected. So let's put 1 and 1. No, you're saying you're not sure it's in the elbow area, but in Dr. Golden's report, he talks about seeing defects all the way from the antecubital fossa area, which is the elbow, to the forearm, doesn't he? I'm not saying those are necessarily all the same wound. I would like to count only one of those. Well, I'll go along with you for the moment. Now, we have Mrs. Menendez's left chest area, correct? Yes, I see 12. Yes, in this photograph, correct? Yes. And then in the additional section that's shown in X-ray 179, there are 2 more, correct? 2 more. And I'm not sure where they came from. But they easily could have come from the wound that went into her chest that we saw in the photographs of. I don't know that, so I'd like to put it in the right-hand side column too. And then we know, by the way, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 round objects in the X-ray 175. These are. Off to the right side, do you know what they are? That's debris, not pellets. Okay, now if you want to discount this pellet or this potential pellet in Mr. Menendez's right arm, is that correct? Yes. And you want to discount one of the pellets in Mrs. Menendez's left arm? Yes, it looks like a spray. A spray? Just from the ether? From somewhere else. Objection argumentative. The reason you want to discount them, the court says, wait a second, counsel, just hold on, relax. When there's an objection, wait for the court to rule. Ms. Abramson says, I'm going to ask a different question. The court says, regardless of what you want to do, you're going to wait until the court rules. Is that right? Wow. Yes, Your Honor, of course. The court says, okay, the objection is sustained. What a dick. That was for no reason. For no reason. Ms. Abramson says, I submit to you, Dr. Lawrence, the reason you want to discount those is that you know if you count them, there's 4 too many pellets here for 1 round. Isn't that true? No, ma'am. I didn't add those up until about 10 seconds ago. Uh-huh. The fact of the matter is, if these pellets in her left arm are what they appear to be, part of that same wound, then we're at 28, correct? I don't understand. And if this defect in Mr. Menendez's right arm is also a pellet, we're at 29, correct? What are you pointing to? The one that you think may be a pellet, but you're not sure, and you asked me to hold off on it. Mr. Menendez's right arm. It looks like a fragment. It looks like a shell fragment of a pellet. In other words, kind of like an eggshell, and the rest of the pellet may be one of the others, or maybe somewhere else. You understand the pellets are hollow, and there's something different inside than outside? You're getting out of my area. You're getting into, are you suggesting that a shell is out of your area? What's in my area is the appearance of the x-rays and bullets and pellets, and I noticed that that particular one is decidedly less dense than all the others. It looks like it must be just the surface of a pellet, if it is a pellet at all. It looks significantly different from the others. I'm not willing to count on it as a pellet. I think that might be a mistake. For once he gave a straight, like, logically medical, sort of scientific answer. because he said it's not as dense, like decidedly less dense. Like, okay, I can kind of understand that then. But all his other nonsense to his answers are just BS to me. And I think he's a paid hack. But moving on. All right, if we add up all of these potential pellets, including the 4 that we know struck Mr. Menendez's left elbow but dropped off. Sorry if you can hear that. My boyfriend's doing something in the garage. I think he's making noise, doing something. I don't know. Um, so, including the 4 that we know struck Mr. Menendez's left elbow but dropped off, we're way above the count of 1 shot, aren't we? Mr. Khan says objection assumes facts, not in evidence. The court says sustained. Wait. The objection has been sustained. Ms. Abramson says, let's do the count. The ones that you are willing to concede are 5 in the left elbow, correct? Yes. 9 in the right arm. Yes. One, only one of the 2 in her left arm, correct? Yes. 12 in her left chest. Yes. And there are 2 others from the chest that can be the same, could be part of the same injury. Just a minute. We didn't add those up. They came out to 27, but we know there were 9 strikes to the left elbow, not 5, correct? Yes. And then there is something that could well be another pellet in Mr. Menendez's right arm, correct? But looks like it's not. We'll take it off. We won't even argue about that one. We know that there is definitely another pellet in Mr. Menendez's left arm, correct? Yes. And we know that there's definitely 2 more pellets in Mrs. Menendez's chest area, correct? Yes, there's one other thing I'd like to mention to the jury. Before, they need to know this. Miss Abrams says, Your Honor, could we ask the witness to wait until I finish dealing with his answer to one question before he starts to answer unasked questions? The court says, was this responsive to a previous answer? The witness says, yes. That is bull. They, there was no question pending. He should not be just speaking off the cuff. And for the judge to just be like, yeah, go ahead and say whatever you want to say. That is wrong. The witness, mm-mm. There was no question pending. There's no reason for him to be continually talking. The witness says, yes, it had to do with the chest area pellets. The court says, okay. The witness says, the one right here could be a pellet in her stomach. I'm not sure. She had these head wounds, and the pellet might have gone down her esophagus and into her stomach. The one also might be a stray. It's quite a distance from the others. Ms. Abramson says this one has 2. Those 2 might be strays. And this one that you just thought might be in her stomach shows on the other x-ray as well, doesn't it? Yes. Okay, so it would be. There's another one on a similar plane? Yes. And you still think it's in her stomach. I don't know. So you don't know. I think some of them could be strays, maybe 1 or 2 could be in the stomach, and we're talking about lots of pellets and lots of gunshot wounds and some uncertainty about which pellets came from which gunshot wound. For that reason, I didn't even add up these pellets. But you understand that this chart proposes to do just that, accounting for all these wounds with 1 round. Do you understand that's what the illustration is supposed to show? I think you need to ask the person who made the chart. Again, he goes with that. So you don't understand that. Is that what you're saying? When I approved the chart, when I said that the chart was representative of what happened, I meant that it shows the trajectory of the gunshot wounds. The fact that it struck the elbow of Jose, struck the arm of Jose, and went on into the breast area. I'm not accepting it as showing any more detail than that. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. Now, Dr. Lawrence, you testified this morning that you believe, based on a seen photograph, that there was some support for the notion that both decedents were seated on the couch at the time that there was a shooting. Do you recall that testimony? Those weren't my words. Was that what you meant? I meant a little more than that. A little stronger, I would say. Well, go ahead. Tell us what you meant. I said that. I mean that the photographs indicate that they were both seated on the couch when the shooting began. And what was your reason for believing that? As I said before, it was the blood pattern on the couch and the two areas where the thighs of Mary can be seen having been there, and also his thighs. I want to show you what's previously been marked as 208. That's a photograph, is it not, of the couch with no bodies on it? Yes. You and I have previously discussed because I did a blow up of the cushion where Mrs. Menendez, in your opinion, was sitting, and that cushion shows the blood smear left of center, correct? The bailiff says, question by the jury. The court says, okay, it has to be down lower. Ms. Abramson says, thank you, Your Honor. Okay. And this is what I'm talking about. 209 was a photograph that shows this blood smear area. And I believe you testified you believed that she had one thigh on one side of that smear and the other thigh on the other side of that smear. One up here on the pillow and on the legs down here. Show me again. Thighs on either side here, legs down here. And he points. And what's the width? Now you're saying thighs inside the other smear that appears in the left-hand side part of the photograph. Is that correct? Not, there wasn't a perfect covering or protecting the couch. So you're not saying this is enough space here in this blank area for a thigh? No. All right, now I'm showing you 208, and this couch, by the way, unlike the illustration, has cushions on the bottom, not just pillows on the back, correct? I don't know. Well, you're looking at it. I can't tell if these are, you're talking about below the pillow? The seat cushions. Oh, yes, they are. Separate seat cushions. Yes. It's not a bench-like seat, it's got separate seats. Yes. And this area that's enlarged, 209, is less than, okay, from the middle to the right of that cushion, the stain here on the left side of the photograph is basically about the middle of that cushion, that seat cushion. Yes. Objection calls for speculation. Overruled. The witness says, yes, why don't we put up this other view? Ms. Abramson says, because I want to ask you something before I do that, and I want you to be able to see it. Why is this guy controlling the gosh darn courtroom? He's like, why don't we just put this up for the other view? No, sir. You're not the attorney. You don't get to do that. She will put it up if and when she wants to put it up. Some evidence that you show a witness, you don't always put up. And you don't always even enter it as evidence. It might just be something to refresh somebody's recollection. So for him to just be like, yeah, just show this. What is he doing? He's trying to control the courtroom, and it's evident in the way that he constantly cuts Ms. Abramson off and tries to control the conversation. Anyway, she says, because I want to ask you something before I do that. Now, do you see on the cushion adjacent to it where the body of Mr. Menendez had been a similar pattern of stain in the middle and whiteness on either side? No, could you put this up so I can show what I'm talking about? Sure. So you don't see a pattern of what you opine is two thighs on the right-hand side cushion where Mr. Menendez, we know, was found, seated on the couch when the police got there. I do see the thigh area. I don't see the lower leg pattern. Show me what you think are the thigh areas. Here and probably over in here, there's a suggestion of it. Too much blood has oozed down in there. Well, why don't you take a little light and just show the entire line that goes across the top of the cushion. There's an entire straight line of staining there. That's blood that's dripped on down. It's blood, but you're not a spatter expert. You can't say it dripped on down. Isn't that true? Correct. It certainly looks that way. He said she got him in the you're not a blood spatter expert, and now she's going back over those stains on the couch to be like, well, how can you tell that these are thighs? How can you tell that someone was standing? You're not a blood spatter expert, you just admitted it. So she trapped him in that line of questioning earlier, and now she's coming back to it. Uh, Correct. It certainly looks that way. Well, could I see the little light? Could you illustrate that line? I don't know how to use those. That's a straight line. Now, above it, do you see what do appear to be drops in the cushion? Now, you're right, we're getting out of my area. I see. What I'm attempting to point out to the jury is just from looking at the photos from this distance, you can see where they were both sitting. And that's the simplest way to describe it. You don't have to look at a photograph to see Mr. Menendez was sitting on that cushion because that's where he was when the police found him, correct? What I'm saying is this photograph clearly shows where they were both seated. I'd like, she says, I'd like you to take this photograph 208 and circle for me on it where you think it shows Mr. Menendez's thigh marks, both thighs. I can't do that. So it couldn't show both thighs? No, it will destroy the value of the exhibit. It can confuse things. No, it won't, because that's a plastic cover. You can write on the plastic cover and the picture will be preserved. Why are you fighting it, buddy? Okay. No, no. I want you to show each thigh separately. I've circled the two areas that are roughly symmetrical. That shows the two people seated side by side. So you believe he's seated at the left edge of the cushion. Is that what you're saying? I don't know if his whole body is there. His leg might have rotated out. This thigh looks like it was there. I'm much more certain about Mary Menendez. With respect to you, you think you see space of two thighs, right? Yes. Thigh 1 and thigh 2, correct? Yes. With Mr. Menendez, there simply is a less smeared area on the left-hand side of the cushion, and you're opining that both of his legs were there. No, his right leg. Okay, so we have thigh 1 for Mr. Menendez. Yes, but we don't have thigh 2 zone. Not for sure. It's not well shown. Dr. Lawrence, you were not consulted before these illustrations were made, correct? Correct. Which which are you talking about? Any of them? The reconstruction diagram? Right, the diagram. You were not consulted. No. And do you have any idea whose, if anyone's, medical opinion was sought before these illustrations were drawn? No. I want to go through some of them with you. 221 is the other half of 220. It's just shown from a different angle, correct? Yes. And again, in 221, Mrs. Menendez's arm is shown down at her side, and the forearm is not shown as being injured, correct? Yes. And then the next, which no one is going to see, do it here. This is 241, and this purports to show 240 and 241 purport to show a scenario of Mr. Menendez receiving the head wound, correct? Yes. Now, what medical evidence is there, Dr. Lawrence, to show that at the time that Mr. Menendez is receiving the head wound, Mrs. Menendez is on the couch? I can't prove that. There's no medical evidence that would prove that. Thank you. And with respect to Mr. Menendez's head wound, what evidence is there to show that his head was facing in precisely the direction shown in the illustration? There's none. And if I could have, you've indicated you were more comfortable with the doll than with the artist's doll here than with the illustrations, correct? Yes. Now, as a medical examiner of bodies, is it fair to say that the most you can say with medical certainty is based on what you can see on the body? Would it be a fair generalization? No. All right. When it comes to the trajectory of wounds, is that your area of specialty? That's one of the areas that I deal in. Yes. Now, you've seen the photograph of the back of Mr. Menendez's head from the autopsy, correct? Yes. And you've read the description of where this wound is, correct? Yes. And you stuck your little wire slightly to the right of the midline, haven't you? Yes, very slightly. And in fact, Well, just a minute. It's hard to tell. These dolls aren't anatomically correct, so it looks to be just maybe a smidgen to the right. And again, I'm not attempting to recreate precision where it doesn't exist. Well, there is precision about whether this wound was to the right of the midline or to the left of the midline, isn't there? I mean, you can see it on the photograph, can't you? Well, let's look at the photograph. I'll get that in a second. I just want to read something. This is the photograph that was previously marked 185. Can you tell from that photograph? It looks close to the midline of the head, and Dr. Golden describes it at the midline. Okay. It's a large defect and it appears to be close to the midline. All right. Now, is there a direction of that wound? Yes, he says that the direction is back to front. We've already gone over this before, but I have to refresh my memory. Go ahead. It's complicated. So he reads and then says, it states that the trajectory is back to front without angulation or deviation. So he's saying it's straight back to front. Okay, and you were asked on, I think, your original direct examination whether there were any signs of any exiting. Yes, and there was a pellet mark, as I recall, in the right temple area that he felt was an exit wound. In fact, there were two. Isn't that true? Yes, I'm sure it's true. I'd have to double check. Look at page 3. The witness does. He says, yes, there were two. So it's two exit lacerations, and one is the right ear area, correct? Yes. And the other is the right temple. I think you testified to the right temple one. Is that correct? Yes. Now, did Dr. Golden describe where the semicircular contact abrasion was on the back of Mr. Menendez's head? Where are you reading? Page 3, shotgun wound number 1, first big paragraph starting with the word however. I don't see such a paragraph on page 3. Let me take my page 3 and see if we've got the same page 3. Yeah, starting right there, she points. He said, you said the paragraph starting with however. No, I said the first big in the paragraph down the middle there, however. Why don't you read that? However, no, to yourself first. The witness does. Yes, he said that the contact abrasion was posterior superior, so that would put it above the entrance hole along the top of it. And didn't he also say it was 1 inch to the left of the posterior midline? The abrasion collar, yes. Yes, and the abrasion collar tells you where the muzzle of the gun came in contact with the scalp, correct? Yes. Okay. Well, just a minute. Would you restate the question? I'll ask it this way. Does the abrasion collar indicate where the muzzle of the gun came in direct contact with the scalp? No. This guy is so difficult. And what does it indicate? The muzzle is sometimes indicated by a muzzle imprint or a muzzle contusion. Abrasion collar is from the shot passing through the skin. So there is no muzzle imprint here? That's just an abrasion collar? Correct. So when it's described as a contact wound, there's no real proof that it is, in fact, a contact wound, rather just a very, very close wound. As I said before, it is probably a contact wound based on the absence of soot around the hole. Had there been a gap, we would have more gunshot residue deposited on the skin, also the explosion of the wound. So how come there's no abrasion collar? How come there's no muzzle ring? For the same reason, there's not any blood around the wound on the skin, I suppose, the muzzle imprint. You said you suppose. Do you know? Mr. Khan says, may the witness finish his answer. The court says, yes. The witness says, it's complicated. Ms. Abramson says, uh-huh. The witness says, when the muzzle is held against the skin, the weapon is fired. The projectile goes on in. The gases, if there's a bony structure beneath, such as the skull, the gases hit that, bounce back. The skin is literally exploded as if there were little firecrackers in there. And that's why you get the radiating splits and tears of skin around the hole. Uh-huh. At that time, when that happens, the skin literally flies out forcefully against the muzzle of the weapon and sometimes receives a bruised imprint from the muzzle. When that occurs, the muzzle imprint is seen as a pale area outlined at the periphery by hemorrhaging. And the court says, wait, he wasn't finished. The witness says, we don't see that here. It's a complex series of events that cause these wounds and marks. So it's a bruise, not a burn. The thing we're talking about that is mentioned in the report is an abrasion collar, and that has to do with a shot passing through the muzzle imprint as a patterned contusion, a patterned bruise. Let's stay with that for a minute. It's not a burn. It's not like the barrel of the gun burns the skin, correct? No, ma'am. It's a bruise when the skin flies back and hits a hard rock or a hard object. Absolutely. The court says, how much longer are you going to be? Ms. Abramson says, a while, Your Honor. The court says, okay, 1:30. So they are going to end and go to lunch. So we are going to stop here and continue on next week with the continuation of Dr. Lawrence's cross examination, or recross, I should say. And it's going real well for him, I gotta say. He's if I was on that jury, I'm not saying I wouldn't necessarily convict, but I would not believe this witness whatsoever. Do you think that this witness is credible? Let me know in the comments below because I'm very curious to see what you guys think. I don't think he's credible. I think it's not that he's not knowledgeable in medicine, but he is talking about so many things that are outside of his expertise, which makes me not trust him. Why are you talking about all these things that you're not here to talk about? Plus, your wishy-washy answers and you can't give a straight answer or you just refuse to answer questions about certain diagrams and things. It's like, what? Like you can't give any kind of opinion on it medically speaking from your standpoint. The way that it just very much seems to me like he is trying to push the state's narrative, especially because he is not the forensic pathologist that did the original autopsy. He is the dude that they brought on for the second trial to basically read all the reports and then regurgitate it back and give another opinion. So that's who this guy is. Oh, my alarm's going off. I gotta stop it. That's time for me to go. No, just kidding. Anywho, it really is time for me to go. So that's all I have for you guys in this for this episode. We will continue on next week and keep going with him. He's almost done, I swear. We're gonna finish him on this day, Wednesday, November 8th, and then Dr. McCarthy is going to enter the picture. So we're almost done with Dr. Lawrence. Thank goodness, because I don't think I could take it much longer. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out if you haven't already done so, and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss future episodes on the transcript reading for the 1996 Menendez brothers trial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye now.